Welcome to A Vibe Above, your space for deep healing, vibrant energy, and powerful transformation. Here, we explore holistic wellness, sound healing, mindset shifts, and the path to your future self. Every episode is designed to help you tap into the wisdom of your body, elevate your energy, and expand into the version of you that feels fully aligned. Through ancient practices, modern insights, and grounded guidance, you'll uncover the tools that create lasting change, inside and out. You're here to rise, to heal, and to step boldly into the life that's waiting for you. So let's dive in. Welcome back to A Vibe Above. I want to begin today with a question. Welcome back to A Vibe Above. I want to begin today with a question. How much of what we believe about ourselves has simply become familiar? Most of us have a way of describing who we are. We might say we're more comfortable behind the scenes, that creativity has never felt natural, or that leading others isn't something we've ever considered. After repeating those descriptions for years, they become part of the way we see ourselves. Eventually, they feel less like conclusions and more like facts. Lately, I found myself wondering where those ideas begin. How do they become part of our identity? Our lives are shaped by experiences, conversations, relationships, and the meaning we give to all of them. Over time, it's easy to carry those meanings forward without ever thinking to revisit them. One of the things I enjoy most about working with people is watching what happens when we become curious instead of certain. Things like a conversation shift and new memories surface. Someone begins to remember moments that never seem to fit the description that they've been carrying about themselves. It's as though a much bigger picture starts to come into view. That's what I'd love to explore with you today. What happens when we become willing to look at ourselves with fresh eyes? What possibilities open up when we realize that some of the conclusions we've carried for years may simply be ready for a second look? One of the things I've noticed over the years is how naturally we label ourselves. We rarely hesitate when someone asks us to describe who we are. We have an answer ready because we've been living with those descriptions for a long time. They've become familiar. What's interesting is that when I begin asking people where those beliefs came from, there's often a pause. Sometimes the answer is easy to trace back to a particular experience. Other times it's a collection of moments that slowly shape the way we saw themselves, the way they saw themselves. Either way, it reminds me that many of those things that we believe about ourselves didn't appear overnight. They developed over time, often without us realizing it. I find that fascinating because once a belief feels familiar, we stop questioning it. It becomes part of our identity, and from there it begins to influence the choices we make, the opportunities we pursue, and even the possibilities we allow ourselves to imagine. That's why I think asking where a belief came from can be such a powerful place to begin. It's not about proving ourselves wrong, but about giving ourselves the opportunity to see whether the conclusion we've been carrying still reflects who we are today. As I've thought about this over the years, I've realized that one experience rarely defines us. It's usually the meaning we attach to the experience that stays with us. We all interpret life through our own lens. We draw conclusions, often without even realizing we're doing it. And then those conclusions become the foundation for how we see ourselves moving forward. Imagine a child who shares an idea in class and is laughed at. The experience lasts only a few moments, but the conclusion might last for decades. Somewhere along the way, my idea wasn't accepted. Quietly becomes, I don't have good ideas. A difficult conversation becomes, I'm not good at communicating. A disappointment becomes, success isn't for me. I'm not suggesting that every belief we hold about ourselves is inaccurate, but I do think many of them deserve another look. Sometimes what we've accepted as part of our identity is simply a conclusion we reached years ago with the information and experiences we had at the time. And that feels like an important distinction. Because if a belief was learned, it can also be questioned. And when we're willing to question it, we create space to discover something new about ourselves that may have been there all along. One of the reasons this conversation matters so much to me is because I don't believe we can fully understand ourselves if we never question the beliefs we've been carrying. It's easy to spend years trying to become more confident, more successful, or more fulfilled without ever asking whether we're building on a foundation. One of the reasons this conversation matters so much to me is because I don't believe we can fully understand ourselves if we never question the beliefs we've been carrying. It's easy to spend years trying to become more confident, more successful, or more fulfilled without ever asking whether we're building on a foundation that was shaped by old conclusions rather than present truth. I've watched this happen with clients time and time again. Someone will begin by describing themselves with complete certainty, and then as we continue talking, they remember experiences that simply don't fit the label they've been carrying. They'll remember the time they led a project, found a creative solution, or did something they never imagined they could do. Those moments don't disappear. They were simply overlooked because they didn't match the identity that had taken root. That's why I love asking questions more than giving answers. Questions create space. They invite us to look again. And sometimes, looking again is all it takes to realize that we've been seeing ourselves through a smaller window than we ever realized. Most of us don't need to be convinced we're capable. We need to become curious about the story that convinced us we weren't. As I look at the world around us, I can't help but wonder if this is one of the reasons so many people are searching for something more. We often think we're looking for a different career, a healthier relationship, or a greater sense of purpose. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes that's true. But I also wonder if what we're searching for is a clearer understanding of ourselves. When we begin questioning the beliefs we accepted for years, something shifts. We stop looking outside ourselves for all the answers and begin paying attention to what already resonates within us. Decisions become a little clearer. We feel less pressure to fit someone else's definition of success and more freedom to discover what feels meaningful in our own lives. For me, this is where self-understanding becomes so valuable. It's less about changing who we are and more about removing the assumptions that have shaped the way we've seen ourselves. As those assumptions begin to loosen, there's room for something else to emerge. A perspective that's based less on old conclusions and more on who we are today. And perhaps that's the real opportunity. Not to become a different person, but to see ourselves with fresh eyes and give ourselves permission to grow from that place. The more I work with people, the more I notice that understanding ourselves is very different from trying to improve ourselves. We live in a culture that encourages us to keep adding more knowledge, confidence, discipline, and strategies. Those things certainly have their place, but they can also distract us from a much more important question. Who are we trying to improve? If the picture we have of ourselves has been shaped by years of experiences and conclusions that we've never questioned, then it's worth wondering whether we've been putting our energy into changing the wrong things. What if the greatest shift doesn't come from becoming more of something, but from seeing ourselves more clearly? I don't think self-awareness is about searching for a new identity, but instead about becoming honest enough to ask whether the one we've been carrying still feels true. Sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes it's an opportunity to discover that we're far more capable than we once believed. That possibility feels hopeful to me because it reminds us that we're not limited by every conclusion we've ever reached. We always have the ability to ask another question, to see ourselves from a different perspective, and to choose what we carry forward. Perhaps that's why I find questions so powerful. A good question creates space. It slows us down just enough to notice something that we may have overlooked for years. Instead of asking, how do I become more confident? We might ask, what experiences shaped the way I see myself? Instead of wondering whether we're capable, we might look for the moments that tell a different story. Those moments are often there. We just haven't given them the same attention as the experiences that reinforce the labels that we've been carrying. I think that's one of the reasons self-understanding feels so freeing. It gives us permission to look at ourselves from a different perspective. We begin to realize that our past experiences are part of our story, but they don't have to write every chapter that follows. The goal isn't to erase our experiences or pretend they didn't influence us. It's to recognize that we have the ability to revisit the conclusions we drew from them. Sometimes it's all it takes to begin seeing ourselves in a completely different light. As we wrap up today, I'd love to leave you with one question. The next time you catch yourself saying, "That's just who I am," pause for a moment before moving on. Ask yourself where that belief began. Also ask yourself whether it's something you've experienced, repeated, or something you simply carried for so long that it feels like part of your identity. You may discover that that label still fits or that it doesn't. Either way, asking the question creates space for a different conversation, and sometimes that's where the greatest insight begins. Most of us don't need to become someone else. We simply need the willingness to look at ourselves with greater clarity and question the conclusions we've accepted without realizing they were only one interpretation of our experiences. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I hope this conversation stays with you over the next few days. The next time you describe yourself, pay attention to the words you choose. They might reveal more than you realize. Until next time, keep rising above. Many blessings. Before we wrap up, I want to invite you to my next workshop, Fearless by Design, happening Thursday, August 20th. We're going to look at the specific fear patterns in your human design and how they may be showing up in your life, leadership, or business. You'll also receive a personalized reflection report created just for you. The registration link will be in the show notes. Or you can also join us inside the Inner Sovereign Society, where the workshop is already included and we go much deeper into human design, wealth frequency, nervous system regulation, and so much more. I hope to see you there.